Hey there, and welcome to the Confident Woman Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Brooks. Join me as I sit down and chat with co-hosts, friends, and carefully curated guests and talk about all the things that empower you to become your best and most confident self. So, let's get started. All right, ladies, welcome back to another episode. So today we have with us Lydia Bagarozza. And she is with Visibility on Purpose, which is a PR and media company that was founded by a publicist herself and a publisher, her co-founder, which is Bridget Cisco. And together they help create programs and courses for authors based on their companies and online businesses. And they do so much really just to get exactly what their brand and their company is, visibility on purpose. So, of course, we're going to be talking about all the things. So, if you're ever like, how do I get visibility on my business, on my brand, or if you're up and coming creator, author, podcaster, any sorts of that, and you're wondering, yeah, I can't do all this on my own. How? This is exactly what today's episode is going to be about. We're going to pull the covers back and we're going to take a deeper dive into what it means to create visibility, but more importantly, on purpose and with purpose. So, Lydia, thank you for joining us today. So, tell us, I'm curious, how did you get into this line of work? And tell us more about what visibility on purpose is.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. So, how I got into this line of work was by accident, actually. So, I started my PR career about 10 years ago. I actually wanted to really desperately be in the music industry. I'm from New Jersey. You'll probably hear my accent. And so, I wanted to go work in New York City at a big record label. And that was my dream. And I found an opening for a PR internship. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And so I got in. I absolutely hated my internship. And I was like, I have to promise myself that I'm not going to get into PR ever again. And then LOL to another opening where they actually had a job opening. And I dove right back in because I was like, I know that, music is my purpose. I need to be here, whatever. So I got into the music industry and it was funny, I kind of fell in love with PR by accident, like I mentioned, where I realized, like, it's a challenge to be able to write a pitch. That's like an email that you would introduce to a writer or an editor, introducing whatever it is that you have, right? In this case, it was music, but it was a challenge to send them a song and kind of like explain the emotional aspects of like why this song is amazing and what it is without actually playing the music and getting them to play it so that they're interested in potentially covering it. And I fell in love with the idea of like words and how they can really express a person, a brand, whatever that is. And so years later, I moved into beauty, fashion, and lifestyle. I realized the music industry wasn't for me. And so I did PR in that space. So I have a lot of product background. And then when the pandemic hit, I realized that I wanted to really help make a difference with these business owners that deserve brand awareness. Agency life is a little bit different where it's like corporate. They're just pumping out content. They want you to work with whoever and they just assign you to different brands and you might get a really great brand or you might get one that like doesn't. And so I like was obsessed with all the beautiful businesses that I got to work with. And I was like, I want to do this on a bigger scale for myself. So anyways, fast forward into the agency, then Bridget and I connected where she owned a publishing house at the time and she's always been a speaker. And so she was helping business owners get their books out there on Amazon. But also what I loved is she was the only one I saw personally talking about the media. And that's such a huge piece when you're building a personal brand with these books. And so I DM'd her and I was like, hey, this is really cool what you're doing. And then the two of us ended up somehow collaborating. We met up in person in New Jersey. We're both from Jersey. And we created Visibility on Purpose, which was originally just like a course about PR and media exposure. And then it turned into an entire brand. And so now we call the course Pitch Party, which is our flagship course where we teach business owners how to pitch themselves to the media. So we do a lot of authors. So I'm so excited to talk to you about like book PR today if you have any questions. But we also help, anything that has to do with, just like personal brands, product brands, just brands in general that are ready to get themselves out there. So one of our clients is a real estate developer and he does like Airbnb stuff. And so that's really fun. We have, just everything that you could think of, a lot of holistic health practitioners. So yeah, that's our spiel.
I love it. You're like, yeah, I created it by accident, but your brand is visibility on purpose. I
Yep.
love the whole dynamic. And it's like sometimes we don't know what we're creating, but you create it because there's a passion behind it and there's an interest. And sometimes it's just, well, we'll see where it goes. And you realize now after, being in business for a few years, but the like attracts like, and you've brought in now a partner that you guys grew this into what it is today. So, of course, being a podcaster, personal brand, and a published author, yeah, you're really speaking my language. So, I've had to navigate many of those avenues to try to figure out, like, what do I do? How do I do this? And, sometimes as a creative, you really don't know what you don't know. So, it's hard for us to ask those questions per se, or know what's on the other side of like, okay, I got to this point of creating, now what? And, from the space that I'm in and being around others, podcasters and authors in particular, we're all hearing the same kind of gripes. The what's next? Because we're like birth this thing that
Mhm.
took years to pour our heart and our soul into. And it's like, okay, world, take it, love it, appreciate it. But then we're like, wait, the world doesn't even know it exists.
Yeah.
That's where people like you come in. So I'd love for you to kind of share some of the content or the processes that you guys go through with those individuals. Now you'd mentioned different industries, real estate to healthcare to personal brands and published authors, podcasters, etc. What are some of those pain points, I guess, that would come into where you guys would come in?
Yeah, I love that you mentioned as an author, like creating this beautiful story, pouring your heart and soul into it, it comes out, and then you're like, okay, that's it. Like, and that is the story that we hear from so many authors, and personal brands in general. It's like we put so much of our effort into creating something, and then we don't know what to do with it. And so I think when it comes to I'll speak on books first, and then I'll kind of shift over into, like, personal brands in general and, like, what the pain points are. But for books, especially for authors that are writing, like, maybe autobiographies, or is yes, autobiography. No, biographies. I'm thinking of memoir, there we go. Memoir styled or anything where it writes like something about your framework. A lot of us have a book where it kind of like mentions our framework in it, and then we're service-based business owners. And so when we're thinking about this book, it's really what it is like when the book comes out, the media is not going to be interviewing the book. They're going to be interviewing you. And so I think what a lot of publishers don't tell authors, and I get it because it's not their expertise, but like, is that they really need to create a robust personal brand that is behind the book. And so when we get to the book launch, we can be the ones interviewed, or we can kind of lean on our expertise for media coverage. I think a lot of publishing houses will tell you, like, oh, just write a press release and that's how you get the media, and that's actually not the case unless you're Oprah Winfrey. Nobody cares about your press release because they don't know who you are. And so convincing them to cover the press release or cover your book is going to be a huge curve over maybe your skill set that is within the book, which is actually the meat and potatoes of everything. So what we tell our authors is, let's talk about your personal brand. Let's put you as the forward-facing piece. Of course, we're going to talk about your book, but we're going to lead with what is the contents inside the book. So maybe, perfectionism, we can talk about this. I'm just staring at your book behind you. One of my clients just got interviewed about like stopping perfectionism in The Every Girl, which is a great publication. They also have a really cool Instagram. But anyways, she will talk about this, like she'll talk a lot about authenticity and creating from a place of what feels good to you. And so that was like a natural, easy, interview for The Every Girl, was her talking about perfectionism. So when we think about press, I want you to think about leading with yourself first and then naturally sharing your book. And so when they get a taste of like what it is that you have to share, they're going to want more and then they're going to purchase the book. So what we always talk about is like extending the shelf life of your book. So it's not like it comes out and then it falls flat. And then pain points. I will just list the first and most painful one for everybody, which is social media. So every business owner that I've talked to, which is many, 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 will say that they built their business on social media, which is fantastic because that's our warm leads. This is our initial audience. And so, of course, we're going to sell to our initial audience. But after a while, a lot of the times it gets to a point where you want to grow or you're ready to grow, you're hitting that plateau, and then they're struggling with the algorithm, posting all day, trying to figure out how to do this. They're spending time scrolling and following, and it just creates this huge cycle. And if you're not an influencer, sometimes it's just like it doesn't make sense to be battling the algorithm. It's not worth your time. Also, Instagram isn't a good SEO. And I want to just clarify that I do love Instagram. I think that it's a great nurturing platform, but that's what it is. It isn't really a growth strategy, it's a nurturing strategy. And so when we think about PR, we're really thinking about like SEO. How can we create a boost in our Google searchability? How can we talk to new audience members? How can we create relationships with high profile experts? Like we get to, I get to talk to you today, and this is so exciting to me. And now we're going to have a relationship. So, how do we create these relationships and new points of entry for individuals to find us? And then, of course, the perks for editorial are the logos and the association that comes with that and that credibility and that trust.
I love that. You definitely speak in my language here because obviously, I mean, I published my book. It's coming up on 4 years now. And there were so many of those struggles that I personally had to overcome, but even more so when it came to publishing, because
Mm,
I was a first time new publisher
yeah.
or author, and nobody would give me that. Like, what was okay? So I got some stories to share here.
Please.
Sometimes I don't have a platform for me to share because I'm always like, I love interviewing my guests, but
Yeah, please share.
at the time of me writing my book, I got to, everything was all done, and then it came time to publish, and I was new to this whole thing. I mean, this was very much self-taught. I had some guides and some mentors and some coaches, but really it's up to that author to go do everything else unless you have some ginormous firm who has paid for you and a story, and then they take everything under their, I guess, organization, their company. But that doesn't mean that it removes you from the equation because you are, as you said, the personal face behind everything that you do. So you might publish a book, but you are the person that people are interested in because you're the creator, you're the author. Without you, there is no story.
Yep.
So I remember going down that route of publishing or pitching myself to some publishing companies, and it was just rejection after rejection after rejection. And it was very discouraging and disheartening. But I think I knew that going into the whole pitching because it was new to me. I wasn't taking rejection personally because I didn't have anything really to back it up other than what I had built on my social medias, but I believed in my story and I believed in myself. And I knew that there was a way, somewhere, somehow, that my book will be published. So after rejection, I had laundry list of all these traditional publishers, looking up their lit agents to who was connected to who. And it was just this whole animal that I had to tackle. So there was one in particular publishing company that I did reach out to, and as expected, I thought I was going to get denied. But they were the only one that actually came back and engaged in a conversation with me and said,
Mm,
"Hey, we love what you have. We believe in it." And the person who was telling me this, they were, I forget their role, but it was something higher up. And that's why I was like, wait, the higher up person's actually engaging with me, and it wasn't an assistant or an auto rejection. So they said, let me go speak to the team and I will get back to you. So I was like praying about it. I was like, come on, God, you got to come through here. And so he comes back and says, listen, I fought for you, but fill in the blank. It was basically the same cliche. You are a new author. You don't have just ginormous following, and it would be a big risk for us as a publisher to take you on under our brand and our name.
mm,
However, We have a sister company. And I said, okay, tell me more. Because at least now there was a direction, not a closed door.
Yeah.
And they had directed me to this sister company, which I had a call, probably an hour's worth of a sales call with this guy, and asked him all the fears, all the questions, because I'm new. I don't know what I don't know. So I'm asking everything. And I had signed with that company, sent over my manuscript, and it was about 3 months later, I had to keep knocking on the door like, "Hey, what's up? Like, why? I don't think this should take this long." And after 3 months, they finally come back and say, "We have to address some of the areas in your manuscript." And I was like what? They said, "There's some language, there's some context, and there's some sensitive topics that were mentioned in the book." And I said, "Okay, I could take care of that." So I said, "But regarding this sensitive topic, what do I do about it?" And they said, "Well, either you can get permission from the person, you can uh, remove it entirely, you can, you know, wiggle it around so it's not really the truth so that that person can't come back, or you can publish under a pen name." And I was like, hang on a second. So you want me to lie? You want me to whitewash? And you also want me to publish under somebody else's name that isn't me, but this is my story? And they said, well, we're not exactly putting it that way. I said, yes, you are. I said, we're going to have to part ways. So I had a bell on that publisher, and I just went back and started praying about it. I was like, what do I do again now? Like I'm at a standstill. And I put out a post on social media and said, this is what's happening. And I'm now back at square one. So please, my book needs to be published. And quite a few people were tagging this individual. And so I reached out to them. And funny story is that I actually had met that individual of this publishing company in January. Now, this is May of the same year, after I had just parted with the only company that even gave me interest, that I was just thinking, this is my one and only chance. So parted that way, closed that door on the other people because they weren't going to publish what it is. Go knocking on this other door, and they open it up, and I said, hey, can I bring my story? This is what I got. And they said, absolutely. So I signed with that publishing company, and funny story on that, how I was like, if this is for me, let me have like some sort of a sign or something to know that I'm not going to get screwed over and waste more time in this publishing. And after I said yes and signed with that company, in the welcome email was a picture of me with that gentleman helping me, as if that couldn't have been the very one and only time I ever met this man. And that was on their welcome kit. Like, welcome to this publishing company. We're here to help you publish your book. And I was like, wow. Okay. So now that I had sealed the deal with my publisher, there was a whole world of publishing, editing, and writing that I had not even explored yet. So that's why door number one was locked, shut, and closed forever, because my book wouldn't have been the book that it is today had I just reached out to any publisher that was willing to accept me. And so I come full circle on that story because it's individuals like you and the purpose, the visibility and the purpose and the intent behind everything that you guys do for your client that will help you get to where you need to be. So you don't have to have this big run on like journey and feel rejection and closure and this all over. Because as a creator, when you pour your heart and soul into something, you want it to know that it has meaning because your story had
Mhm.
meaning. And that's what you guys do in your business, is connect the right people with the creation so that your brand and your business has life and given that purpose. So I just want to thank you
Yeah.
for one, being out there doing this work because it's so needed. Two, for allowing me to share that bits for you so that you can understand the pain points. And then three, for you listeners, you guys probably never even knew that story existed, but I got stories. So, but I was just like, I don't know if I should share that or not, but maybe so, because it helps with you guys knowing what is needed out there and some of the pain points that maybe individuals hadn't shared with you yet.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It really means a lot. And it also just like helps validate us and what we're doing. And
Y-
I love how you shared the journey of what you went through, because I think when business owners come to us or authors, a lot of the times they have been through the ringer already and they've, tried the publishing route and they didn't really like the big publishers. They didn't understand what they needed. And they're going here and then they find, mid-tier publishers that are trying to like screw them out of money and like all of this stuff. And then maybe they didn't go through that, but maybe their book came out and now they just simply don't know what to do. And they're looking for the quick fix to make the book work and to make like the marketing work. And so I love what you shared on your journey, because something we do inside Visibility on Purpose is also remind clients that like building a brand, a book, a personal brand is a journey too. Like originally, when the publisher told you that he couldn't take you on even because he believed in you, he was sharing the honesty of credibility, which I understand sometimes for the bigger companies. They will say, like, listen, you don't have a following, you don't have this, you don't have that, blah, blah, blah. And so there's so many different routes that you can take with books. Like you can decide to self-publish. You can work with a lower, not lower, but like a boutique publisher. You can do a big publisher, but there's also things that we need to have in place and strategies. And there's a journey to everything. So I want to just like share credibility in general and how we can get to where we want to go. So maybe I'll share a little bit about like immediate credibility. So immediate credibility is like actually, the other day, this came to me and I was like, oh, this is so smart. All my things in the shower. It's always in the shower and I get the best ideas.
Right.
But when we're thinking about credibility, we're thinking about our immediate, maybe certifications, our professional background, but also remember that you are an expert in your own right. And just think about, where is your experience? Expert, there's experience in there. So that can be a, medical degree, or it can also be life experience too. And so you might say, like, I'm a mental health advocate, say that's, something that you like to go with. And you might be able to claim that title because you have experience with learning about mental health. Maybe you've experienced a lot of hardships in your life and you've been able to overcome it and you've helped others, and therefore you can have this title. So we're thinking about credibility. We're thinking about originally, like, what are our bragging points? What kind of help have we created for our clients? Maybe we have a 100% retention rate, client retention rate, and that can be another piece of credibility. Or maybe we've helped X amount of people. Maybe we, apprenticed under an amazing, famous person. I don't know, whatever it is. So these can all be credibility pieces, and in addition to our experience and our certifications. Then we're going to think about other pieces. So follower count may be important to big publishers. So that is another credibility piece. But also, you can eventually get to big follower counts if you use press as another way to get there. And so maybe we think about press as another way to get an avenue for credibility. And that is, getting interviewed. We do only organic press. So that means that you are getting interviewed for free, and in exchange for the exchange there is you're providing value to a publication, and then they're able to publish more valuable content for their audience. So we do that. We don't do any paid press, which is also another avenue that people can take, but that's not something that we do. So we do all organic. And say maybe you don't have the giant follower count just yet, but you are able to get a Medium interview, and then you get a Forbes interview, and then you get, the Every Girl, and then you get Well and Good, and then you get Pop Sugar. And before you know it, a few years down the road, you've created a beautiful press trail. You can use that as leverage to go to these bigger publishers and say, hey, I might not have a giant follower count, but you can see I've been featured on here, here, and here. And I've also been, I've spoken at these places and I've interviewed on these podcasts. And maybe you realize that you do have a boost in your follower count. And so credibility there's so many different ways that you can do it. And I always joke around that if the door isn't wide open, like, let's find a window in. Let's find another way to do this. And I mean, I love press for so many reasons, but I also just think it opens up so many doors, speaking of doors, to new audiences, new people to find you. And like, we've just been nerding out over the SEO in general. That's why I keep mentioning it. I'm like, oh, and the SEO. I'll just give you a quick example. One of our past clients got interviewed. She's still doing, the visibility on purpose stuff, which is a skill that you learn for life, right? Pitch Party is a skill that you learn for life, and you can implement it as a part of your weekly CEO day or whatever it is that you call it, your strategy. So she got connected with a women's health writer. She got featured, which was amazing. And she not only was able to now say that she has been featured on Women's Health, she put that logo on her website, she put it on her Instagram. People also convert easier because you're associated with this big publication that they already trusted. But there's something called syndication where a another publication may actually take that article and post it on their site as well because it's great content that they can post. And so they'll have like the little women's health logo, but it'll be somewhere else. So she not only got featured on Women's Health, but she got featured on Yahoo, MSN, and AOL. So that's 4 features in 1, which is amazing for SEO. And it's amazing for you to say, no, I've been featured on all of these places. So yeah, I can go into this all day of why I think that PR is so amazing. But what I really want to hit home with is all of this is a journey and there's no quick fix. And I think when we have a vision of where we want to go with our business, there's a way that we can get there. And sometimes there's different avenues. It's not always linear.
Right. And I love that you shared all of that because even it being, having personal experience in that, I recognize all of that was needed. And the reason on top of sharing why I shared what I did was because
Yeah.
it really set the tone of recognizing, okay, I have to be my own advocate in
Yeah.
this publishing world, but also my own advocate for my PR and my relations and the pitches and the things like that. So it was a lot of the extra work going into it. So I know the heavy load that you guys help carry for your clients. And, especially when it comes to like media pitching and publishing. So somebody might be like, well, yeah, how do I even get onto those big
Mm.
mainstreams? What are some of those tips or strategies for somebody who's listening? Says, I feel like I've overcome a lot in life, or I do
Mhm.
have this expertise or this degree and certification, which does qualify me as an expert. How can I get onto these bigger platforms? How can I be seen outside of just my own platform that I've created, whether it's a large or a small audience? The whole goal is to get you into the eyes of people who have never heard of you.
Yeah. A lot of business owners, personal brands, authors don't know that they actually can get featured on big publications and it is accessible to them. So I think step 1 is like, hey, you can definitely do this. Step 2 is now we want to think about what these publications are covering. And we want to be able to meet them where they're at. We want to think about their audience. They're always thinking about their audience in mind. So how can we showcase our business in a way where we're adding value to them so it's a mutual relationship of value. And I say value a lot because I think it's so important to be able to showcase our value. I always joke around that PR is like selling without selling. It's like selling like a secret selling tactic where you're just sharing your expertise and then people want to learn more about you. And then it's about nurturing relationships at the end of the day. So when say we want to get interviewed on Women's Health, we'll keep using that as an example. Women's Health covers lots of different topics. Say we'll just keep with like mental health and lifestyle. So mental health is typically in a wellness section or a lifestyle section. So we might want to go on Women's Health and peruse around and take a look at those sections. And many publications have like a wellness section or a lifestyle section, but we'll just use Women's Health as an example. And then we want to take a look at what they're covering right now. I feel like there's so many topics that can be evergreen. So perfectionism, I feel like is evergreen. We can always talk about that one. And then there's a lot of other topics too that can be seasonal. So maybe around winter, we talk about winter depression, winter blues. Maybe we talk about, seasonal depression or how less light during the day affects us. And so these are different story angles where we can use those time periods and then use them and leverage by sharing our expertise. And so pitching Women's Health or whatever publication we're looking at in a way where we're able to provide something that's newsworthy and timely or a trending topic. And then it also aligns with who we are, maybe our book and our services and brand.
awesome on those notes because I'm jotting down a few of those as well. Because when I was pitching, so I had this was actually part of what I did prior to getting my book published was starting to go into those media outlets.
Mhm.
And for my book being focused on healing, health, wellness, um, I had gotten a piece published in the Huffington Post, which then to tie into your syndication, Yahoo, MSN, and AOL also had published it. And then I come to find out years later, they had actually republished it like a couple years after
They
the
do that
original.
sometimes.
I know. So I got
That's so
on there.
exciting.
I was reading the comments. I'm like, yep, they're still jerks. It's like, okay. But yeah, it's just kind of funny because I sometimes you forget about these things. And it was several years
Yep.
later, but those are all great tips because once you could find out the publication, the online platform, so not all of the publications go into, say, physical books like magazines or any of that. You could still have now double dipping as a publication, so you can
Yep.
get published into the media, but you can also get published online, which there that content will live forever based off of the SEO. So SEO, for somebody who doesn't understand, is search engine optimization. Those will always be in the background because no matter what you're searching for, you want to be on the top page. And then if you go to Google, for example, those, page 1, 2, 3, and 4. So keeping those keywords up there with your content aligns into what you already do. So as Lydia said, tying into your alignment, leveraging your expertise, and making sure that they point from A to B. Because if you went from A to D, that's where you're going to get lost in the SEOs because that content isn't relevant to who you are today based off of what the content you're producing, right?
Yep.
They got it. Okay.
And yes, I think so. And so when we're thinking about like back to your question of what can they do, like where do they start and how? So I think where we can start is think about what publications you want to be featured in or what podcasts you specifically want to be featured in. Also remember that it needs to align with what you're doing. So like I may love a cooking show, but it doesn't make sense for me to be on a cooking show because I don't talk about cooking, right? So we want to just like think about, okay, what kind of value do I have to share? What topics do I want to talk about? Now, what publications do I want to be on or podcasts? And that aligns with those specific topics. And then after that, we can start researching the writers that we want to connect with, or maybe the hosts that we want to connect with. And so that's kind of the where we should start and what we should be doing. But I think at the very beginning, it's really just strategizing what are our PR goals and what makes sense for us and our business, which can
Right.
also
And so
vary.
and that's the point because you want it to vary because is your, let's just say if we're speaking solely about like a personal brand, you
Yeah.
as a personal brand today will evolve over time.
Hmm.
And I know we've had numerous episodes about building a personal brand. Maybe it wasn't titled that, but your stand is your brand. So as you, the
Yeah.
person behind that, have those core values, it will constantly evolve, but yet you're already in a niche of its own. So you can grow into that. So there's never an oversaturated area. So when you mentioned about, finding those aligned publications and seeing who is the, what is it, the editor in chief or the individual that oversees that particular category or those topics, what is the best strategy then for you to have connections with those individuals? So
Yeah.
obviously you and I had connected through our podcast, through this podcast, but how did, kind of walk through, how did you even find about those industries and the individual so that you can send a message?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hot take, do not message the editor in chief. They're
Right.
busy.
Yeah, noted. That was also on the do not do list. Listen, I've got years of that stuff. So that was
Yeah.
a mistake.
The do not do list, but also very cool people. So, what we want to do is we want to first, again, look at the publication, then think about what category makes sense for us. Almost every single publication at this point has like different categories. We might associate Forbes with business, but Forbes also covers wellness. And so, think about like, if you do want to be on a cooking channel or you do want to be in a cooking publication, there actually might be a lifestyle section in like eating well. I think there actually might be. So I would check anyways if that is something that's important to you, but always look at the section. And then from there, I would just skim the titles and see like what resonates with you. Like maybe you see a title that says like how to be a better leader in 2024 for a small businesses. And maybe that really resonates with you. Read the article, see who wrote it. And that's when you can start creating those start finding the correct writers that make sense, because at the end of the day, writers are people too. And so remembering that when we're reaching out to them, yes, they will cover us if we're aligned, but we also want to make sure that we know what they cover. There might be a wellness writer that only covers supplements. And so, and they only cover like products. And you'll see that very quickly in their written work. It might be like the 10 best, vitamin C's for back to school. And obviously that wouldn't make sense for you to come in and talk about leadership, right? So we just want to make sure that we find the correct writers, and then the best way to introduce ourselves, we teach us inside pitch party, but it's to create a pitch, and the pitch is an email where you kind of introduce like a story angle and an expertise to them in a concise and compelling way. We always like make sure that it's nice and short. It's just giving them a taste of what you can talk about, and like making sure in the pitch too that you are able to explain it in a way that anybody can understand. Sometimes we might have revolutionary ideas, right? Or maybe, I don't know, maybe we created our own framework about, I'm trying to come up with something, but maybe our own framework about writing a book. And when we are pitching ourselves to somebody and we're talking about, this is the framework about writing a book, just remembering that they actually don't understand or know what your framework is. So you want to be able to explain it in a way that anybody can understand. I always joke around like, there are times every once in a while where I'll get a little writer's block writing a pitch for a client, and I'll just have my boyfriend read it over, and I'm like, "Hey, does this make sense to you? Like, would you get this if I pitched it?" And he'll tell me, "Oh yeah, this makes sense." Or sometimes he'll say like, "I don't know what you mean by this." And that's great feedback for me to go back to the drawing board. So I think just remembering that we always want to meet people halfway where they're at too. And I think if we're talking about health and wellness, a lot of our clients are in that space, and I believe a lot of yours are in that space as well. I feel like the media is health and wellness with like training wheels on. So, and it might be very like surface level content sometimes. And so remembering that a lot of these writers, a lot of them are in their 20s and 30s. And so we just want to be able to explain it in a way where we can give them breadcrumbs to get to eventually, our services and all of us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that does because getting in, you're essentially what that is. You're just pitching. You're
Yep.
pitching yourself like, hey, I'm so and so, and I do X, Y, and Z, and this is how I do it. And I would love to be a guest blogger, writer, contributor,
Yep.
whatever that is for X magazine in this section because this aligns with who I am. And you do a short little snippet bio, your mini bio, and that's your lead in. And, to be honest, sometimes you're going to get a yes, but most of the times you'll probably get a no or not at all. But that's okay because they're getting pitched by so many different people who all want to talk about, say, for example, seasonal blues. It's a
Yep.
seasonal, timely thing. So not every article can be published at that time of year. So it's also great to broaden that. And so maybe it's not about seasonal blues, but it's about how to manage your everyday health and well-being. And now you've opened your market to be pitched or accepted year round. So there's different strategies, which I love that you're mentioning these. And, when it comes to your pitch party, now this is your signature program and content that you and Bridget have created for
Yep.
your clients to essentially DIY and DS done for you. DSY. Yes. DIY and DFY. So it's done with you and for you. So it's simple, but you also have options and ways to really take that to the next level. So I'd love for you to share a bit more about what Pitch Party is and how our listeners, if that's you and you're like, this sounds fascinating and I think I could do this maybe on my own, but I'm not really sure. How can
Yeah.
Party help with that?
Yeah. I actually want to go back to what you said about the yeses and the nos, because I think this is so important to talk about. So Sometimes when you pitch, people say yes right away. Sometimes they say, "Ooh, I like what you pitched me, but actually, I have a story about this. Can you speak about this instead?" Which is where you start creating the relationships with those writers. Because what's great about PR is it's the gift that keeps on giving. If you create a relationship with a writer and they know you are a trusted source for a specific topic, they'll come back to you time and time again for lots of different story angles. That has happened to me many times. It has happened to my clients. It's beautiful. Actually, one of my clients, she is a physical therapist and she just did an interview for Shape, and 2 days later, this same writer came back and said, "Actually, I'm writing another story about physical therapy. I'd love to, like, have another interview about this topic." And so it's really truly the gift that keeps on giving. And then when it comes to no's, no's are I don't think no's forever. I think they are no for right now. There have been so many times where I have heard no from a podcast host, for example. And then a few weeks later, they're like, actually, I would love to have them on. I'm transitioning into talking about this topic and they would be perfect. Do you mind coordinating the interview? And other times it may be a no. And then a year from now, like I don't know how they file things away with writers. I have no idea how they do it. But a year from now, they will reach out and say, "Hey, I know I passed last year, but I'm actually writing a story about this, and I think they'd be perfect for it. We coordinate an interview," which is fantastic because it truly is about just awareness and planting those seeds. And again, trusting the process and enjoying the journey of building that brand awareness and building those relationships. Kind of the idea of like going to a networking event and meeting somebody. They might not tell you right away, "Oh, I had this like perfect job for you," or whatever. But 3 months from now, they may knock on your door and refer you business, or they may say that they have a perfect idea they'd like you to work on a new project for them. So it's really about planting these seeds. And then no responses are the same thing. No response. It just means that they're filing away for a later date and a later time. So I never think that pitching should be something to feel daunting or like, "Oh, no one's answering me," because what you're really doing is it's same idea as going to a networking event. You're just creating those relationships for longevity. And then, okay, so pitch party and all the things. So we have DIY, we have done with you, done for you if you want to come over to my agency. So there's so many different options that we have for you. We, Bridget and I, something that we really wanted to do was close the gap between the accessibility of media exposure and all businesses. If you are a business owner that is just starting out to, been in business for a long time, if you are feeling really solid in your offers or your products, you're not going to be transitioning soon and you have your branding pieces in place, PR is for you. And I say branding pieces in place because nine times out of 10, if your branding pieces don't feel like they are in place or aligned, you're going to start doing the PR stuff and they're going to be like, "I want a new photo shoot," or "I want to redo my website." So let's think about the branding pieces first. And DIY is Pitch Party. We have a digital version. So you can go through the course at your own pace. Lots of our clients have done it and they've gotten themselves featured on incredible publications like Forbes, Entrepreneur, USA Today, TV. Actually, someone joined over, we did a nice Black Friday deal. And by February, or no, by January, she had gotten a Fox News interview. And yeah, amazing, amazing. Which, by the way, TV books are really good for TV. So that's a side note. And then done with you is we have an option where we can do consulting with you. So that's something. Done for you is if you are looking to invest in a publicist that is more of like a catered approach, that's where you can come over to me. Or if I am full on my roster, I can always reach out to some of my contacts and see if I can introduce you to the right publicist that makes sense. So lots of options.
I love that you have so many different options, but yet it's all under one thing, which is the pitch party, which is essentially any angle that you come at, you're going to get the support and you're going to get to where that individual needs.
Yeah.
So to your point, meeting them halfway, meeting them where they're at and creating something that is it's affordable, it's accessible, and that's really the continuation of the individual's journey because if you're up and coming, if you're like just brand new, publish a book or just launched a podcast or have now felt that confidence that you can really speak further about your expertise, that is just a stepping stone. And then you take on those bigger clients that have already, been in it for years. So I love that you've considered all different angles of the spectrum of the journey. This is a
Yeah.
journey and making something that again teaches the individual instead of dependent upon just a PR company or an organization because we know that that can be very costly, but not everybody has that kind of
Mhm.
budget, and especially going back to those that are just starting out. So you have the pitch party, and you have now what you're teaching also as far as the certifications, right?
Yeah, as you were talking about, yeah, I love that you have thought about every single piece of the journey. I'm like, ah, and I forgot one. So I love that you said that everybody should kind of take a look at, media training and sometimes it can be very scary to go into a big media company, pay a lot of money, you're fully relying on them, you don't really understand what's going on. So I personally think that everybody should be media trained, and what I mean by this is just understand how the media works. And so our courses are low ticket. You might not be pitching yourself forever. And hopefully you don't do that. So you get to a place where if this doesn't feel like something you want to do, you can hire somebody like myself or anybody else to do this for you. But I think that everyone should really understand how the media works. So when media opportunities come your way, you feel comfortable interviewing and you kind of understand the process. And building a brand is a journey. Like we don't just like say, okay, we built the brand, we're done. It's a long-term strategy. Long-term strategies are what's going to actually build our brand and build it for into legacy building mode or however long you want your brand to be existing or have your book on the shelves, right? And so what we thought about the last piece, and I wonder if there's even any more about what we can offer in different parts of the journey of a business owner. But one of our clients last year asked us if his virtual assistant could take pitch party for him. He bought it and he was like, hey, do you mind if my assistant takes this? I want them to learn how to pitch me. We don't care. We would love that. That sounds amazing. I personally think that's genius. Why not be more efficient? And so she hit the ground running. She got him incredible features, like to the point where we emailed her a few times and we were like, "Hey, we saw that this went live. Like, was that you? We're just so impressed. Like, did he hire somebody?" And hiring somebody was his virtual assistant. Like, she truly just hit the ground running and she created amazing results, like to the point where we thought that he hired a publicist. So, what we decided to do was create a PR assistant certification for VAs. So, the business owners who came to us and said, I love this, I want this, but I truly don't have the time or it doesn't feel aligned for me, they can have their virtual assistants go through the program with us and we will train them as if they are an actual PR assistant. So we have, I think, a little under 10 virtual assistants that are signed up right now. That's going to start June 5th. So we were in early bird right now, which I think this will not be coming out immediately, but it's super low ticket. It's around $500. It's 4 weeks live with us. And we're really going to go through the whole process of what it takes to be a good publicist and actually create quality support. What I've also found too is a lot of virtual assistants will say that they offer podcast pitching and they don't know what they're doing. And I've had clients come to me and be like, look at my pitch kit. And I'm like, what is a pitch kit? I've never heard of this before. And they'll send it over to me and I'm like, oh no, okay. So we just want to create something that I mean, if you can't beat them, join them. Like, let's teach them how to do this the right way.
I love that you have that because it's so true. I mean, we're as the brands or the person behind all these things, we really can't be everywhere. And,
Yeah.
we live in a world where we have to be everywhere and it's just impossible. So recognizing that need and even for your client who actually voiced it out and said, hey, do you guys have, which now gave you inspiration to go create something because you're like, well, if they're one person with that need, how many others are out?
Yep.
And so again, going back to you're meeting the individual where they're at. And so there's really no reason why one couldn't get themselves featured or published or in some sort of online publication to showcase their expertise. Because
Yeah.
the reality is we're all experts in something, but sometimes we don't really have that confidence because we don't feel like, but we're not out there yet. And this is a great stepping stone to get your feet wet into the online visibility, which you guys do. So I love that you have really taken this all into the back, behind the scenes of your business and how you guys do this. I would love for you to share a little bit more about how people can find you, follow along
Yeah.
with you, and be a part of what all these incredible offers that you have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Today was so much fun. I loved getting to talk to you in this way. So you can find us on visibilityandpurpose.com. We also have an Instagram, we have a Facebook, we have LinkedIn. So really just anywhere where you can find Visibility on Purpose, you'll find us. And then Bridget, Aileen Cisco, who's my co-founder, and myself, Lydia Bagarozza, you can find us on Instagram. We have our own websites as well because we also do a lot of different things. Like Bridget is a speaker, an incredible speaker. She got flown out last year to London to speak in front of business owners, which I know amazing. I always brag about that. I'm like, Bridget, you need to talk about this. This is insane. So she does that. And then I do, the PR agency stuff as well. So you can find us all over the internet. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I love talking. I don't know if you noticed today. I love talking to people. And if I can't help you with what you need, I'm more than happy to be a connector and point you in the right direction if I know someone.
Absolutely. So this is just an incredible conversation. Thank you for shining light on so many of my own questions, but kind of anticipated questions where I think that many of us are probably thinking as well. So of course, all of that will be show notes below. So be sure to follow along with their journey, but also individually to see where they're going because as Lydia just said, they're doing so much, but they're also living out what they teach and what they coach on. So thank you again for being an incredible guest and bringing us behind the scenes of what you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of the Confident Woman Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Thanks again for listening.